Hi and welcome to Entrepreneurship with Peter Christo. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing Mr. Peter North, the founder and director of 3P Legal, which is part of the 3P group. Peter has been my lawyer for about 15 years now, and he has dealt with a lot of the fintech and crypto stuff that I'm involved in. I found Peter to be an extraordinarily honest, open and intelligent man who is committed to his work. He brings his whole self to the job. I thought this was an important conversation because it's critical to have a good lawyer, a good accountant as you navigate your way through the start, the middle, and the end of businesses. Peter is insightful, open, and honest. This isn't an advertisement. Peter is just a good example of the sort of person you should be looking for when you go out into the world and find a lawyer to help you with your business. Please enjoy my conversation with Peter North.
So I am a commercial lawyer that has spent 10 years in a medium-sized firm in the city, and the opportunity came up for me to start 3P Legal, which was connecting in with a group of other professional service providers, providing a holistic service to clients, and I really aligned with their mission. And so I thought, you know what, this is a great opportunity. I should take it. So it does mean that when I started my legal practice, it was 2009, the beginning of or at least the middle of the GFC, as far as Australia was concerned. So in my particular graduate year, there were, I think, the law grads were being fired left, right, and centre. So I was grateful to have a job. And anyway, so I thought I'd also bookend my career by then going out on my own during the great pandemic. So certainly I think
all rational decisions.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know. But in both cases, it's all worked out really well. So the firm I joined originally was the firm that I stayed with until I left 3P, and they were a great firm, great people to work with. And so I found the same at 3P. And so I've grown my team at 3P Legal, which was originally just me, to a team of 4. So we've got a law grad, an associate lawyer, and a paralegal. And I keep hiring more staff and keep not being able to get everything done within the time that I like to get things done. So I think that's a good problem to have. And yeah, so and the ethos for 3P is that we have a passion for helping people to prosper. So that's what the 3Ps are, passion, people, prosper. So and that aligns with my legal practice more generally.
Nice. So what? Maybe explain those values that 3P kind of. A lot of times, I guess businesses will put a bit of a tagline on their business and not really walk the walk, sort of thing. So what does that really mean?
Yeah, so for me, and it was always the case with my legal practice, is that it's not just about the transactional nature of the work, but it's also about really understanding the client, what business they're in, what they're doing, what drivers they're facing, what the goals that they're wanting to achieve are, and then to translate that into the legal steps or actions or defensive actions that they need to take in order to get them what they need or want. And so looking at it from a holistic perspective. So rather than just saying, well, we just provide this service, take it or leave it, it's really looking at the person's circumstances and needs and trying to it's a relational model of doing law, really.
It's interesting.
And it's providing services as well.
Yeah, so I won't say name, but I was having a conversation recently with another lawyer who does family law, and he had a different approach entirely. He talked about filtering out clients who he knew were going to be a problem, and basically just cherry picked the ones that are going to be the lowest lift for him and the maximum money. That doesn't sound like the way you approach, but you must still face the same quandary.
Well, I mean, so I'm fortunate in that my clients are wonderful. They're often leaders in their fields, and they're motivated. They're trying to do things, and we're in a fortunate position to be able to help them. And so yeah, I love my clients. They're fantastic, and often you are just in a really fortunate position to be part of decisions that they're making, and helping them to achieve the objectives that they've got. But yeah, I don't see it as a lot of my clients are very long term. And so, and yourself included, when you're in there for the journey, and the ups and downs, then I don't have to be their lawyer for everything, but if I am to be their trusted advisor, so that they know that they can come to me and say, well, this is the situation, what should I do? I may not be able to help them directly, but I can certainly connect them with the right people.
Sure. And look, if as you're, somebody who's used your services for a few years, across a couple of things, including, business and personal stuff, I do feel that I can, pretty well cover my eyes and just go, yeah, whatever, as in, I don't need to double check, if you say, look, this is how it is, then it's really with me. I don't have to get a second opinion as far as I'm concerned. I don't need it. And so the trust feeling is very much mutual. So there's lots of love here, buddy. Lots of love. So let's, given this is a podcast on entrepreneurship, and particularly what I'm trying to do, I guess, is tease out the stuff that people don't talk about. What are with the clients that you deal with who come to you? I presume some of them are pre-startup, some of them are, they're in flight. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you deal with, I guess, calibrating where they are, with how they should be investing their time and money into legal services, not too late, not too early?
Yeah, so it definitely depends what stage of the life cycle you're at. Pre-startup is tough. There's a lot of bootstrapping going on, and so legal fees are probably they're the hardest spend, because they don't advance your central mission necessarily forward. It doesn't necessarily help you with your minimum viable product that you might be trying to achieve. So there is certainly a need for it, but not necessarily a capacity to pay for it. So in the very, very pre-startup stage. But then, in my experience, if you start well, you'll finish better.
Right.
It's certainly in terms of disputes. So a lot of the work that I do as well is helping people to, when they're joining forces, starting a company together, trying to work through some of the issues that might arise in the course of a longer term relationship. I call it like the prenup for businesses, which is the shareholders agreement, sort of working through some of the key decisions that might come up, some of the typical things that I see on the other end, where people are trying to get out of business together and the relationships are broken down. So it's certainly from my perspective, at that end of the market, there's some key legal things that need to be done, but people may choose not to spend the money because it's it's not central to their core product that they're trying to get out. And so it's just a matter of working with them in terms of payment flexibility or fixed fee arrangements to time the work that we do with perhaps when they'll actually get funds in. So if they're doing a capital raise at the same time or whatever, we can work through a lot of those issues, because we do think that it's important, even though at the time perhaps the cost may be inaccessible. At the end of the day as well, it just depends on the type of industry that they're in and what they're doing, as to what legal needs that they'll have right up front. So yeah, we're just certainly happy to explore and have conversations with people, because again, conversations lead to a deeper understanding of my of what I can do for them, so the help that I can give them, and then also for them, it's if I can give them a heads up that such and such might be an issue in 3 months' time or 6 months' time, then at least in 6 months' time they might think, oh, actually I've got to deal with this. This is not just nothing.
Sure. So one of the things that I know you've had to deal with is technology startups or small technology businesses who have complexity. So the ones that are operating in blockchain and crypto. Now I'm sure you're going to be facing AI. You're going to be facing a whole bunch of emerging robotics. How do you synthesize? How do you get across that? I mean, my phone doesn't ring off the hook, so I'm sure you're either Googling or whatever it is. So how do you understand, I guess, the core reality of things like AI and blockchain, so you can actually provide your advice and your legal service?
Yeah. So in some ways, the operating environment hasn't changed. So from a legal perspective, it's like, you've got laws around fundraising, you've got licensing involved in that, and blockchain. One of the key issues is really, is what I'm doing going to be regulated by ASIC, or is it not? Or am I voluntarily going to be regulated by ASIC or the anti-money laundering, counterterrorism finance things? So in a way, it's like the advances key to driving innovation, but from the legal perspective, I mean, it's that's slow to change. So it's really sort of being able to translate the issues from a legal perspective into, and if they can explain their business model to me, they can explain it to a regulator. And so at the end of the day, it's really just a matter of understanding their business, which is the key driver, and then translating that into the regulatory issues or legal issues that might arise for them. And certainly, yes, AI is one of those, copyright contained in that, and conversational language learning. And so from my perspective, it's a matter of really understanding the business environment that they're in, and then translating that for the regulatory.
So you don't find a challenge with, for example, in the crypto world, there's the notion of custody, and people think about custody from a physical point of view. I own my phone, I own the cash that's in my pocket, whatever. But there are nuances there where it's really, for example, it's really about the control of keys rather than actual physical custody. And sometimes physical custody and digital custody aren't, you can't use this, I guess, the same assumptions around them because there are nuances. And that must translate into the sort of agreements or the contracts, particularly for providing services. If I go out with an offering and I'm providing a service around some sort of, I'm trying to not give away some of the stuff I'm working on at the moment, but if you've got,
I've also not going to be giving legal advice.
yeah, that's right, and live on air. So there must be times where the new world, the new digital world, is so completely different to the old physical world, or the physical world, and they need to interoperate. That do you ever find yourself trying to turn left and right at the same time?
Yeah, it depends on the task. I mean, in terms of the specific financial services regulations, I wouldn't call myself a financial services lawyer, and there are those firms around there that can do that specifically. Certainly from my perspective, I know enough to warn people of the pitfalls, but then the reality is that this is a changing area of law. And certainly we're seeing a lot. I mean, the Ripple case is sort of still ongoing over in the US. That's going to impact the perception, at least, as to whether or not these are securities. Certainly the case over there seems to say that they're not, although the SEC is still pressing cases towards various companies. So in contrast, the system in Australia is more settled, I'd say. But there's certainly issues still to be worked through, custody being one of those things.
This podcast is brought to you by Christo Partners, strategic advisors to assist you in commercialising your innovations. If you have an opportunity you seek to bring to market and need help with either going to market, connecting with universities to access technology, or raising capital, or any other matter, contact us on hello@christopartners.com. Yeah, I was just up at the crypto assembly up in Sydney last
Yeah.
week, Thursday, Friday, and we heard a range of speakers, including from the US, about regulations coming through. And I was so pleasantly surprised that there was logic and sense in the room. So I'm imagining that. But it must be, framing regulations must be like driving a car where you're looking in the rearview mirror, to see where you've been.
Yeah, 100%. And there's politics at play as well in some of those regulations, I think. And it's protective. It's trying to protect the consumer that might lose all their money as a consequence of these things. So the regulation is usually it's driven towards disclosure obligations and making sure the disclosure obligations are met in relation to the particular securities which are being offered. There are issues with that, I think, in terms of retail investors' access to money-making activities. But then it's very hard when someone has lost all of their money as a consequence of one of those things not to actually regulate. So I expect more regulation, not less, in this area for sure.
Sure. I mean, look, nefarious actors, regardless of what it is, whether it's llama beans, coffee beans, crypto, cash, happen. And we can, and what's the caveat emptor, buyer beware? Is that right? Did I get that right?
It is, yeah.
So I think people forget that going with your eyes open with this sort of thing, and So you kind of touch on a point that I'd written down here that I wanted to talk about. I don't know how big a deal it is, but given the borderless nature of some of the technologies, how does that affect your work from a legal perspective, given that movement of information and knowledge and digital assets is so seamless now? Is that a challenge?
So from the legal perspective, it's interesting. So yes, I run a completely paperless office almost, and my clients come from all over Australia, really. So in terms of the borderless environment that we're sort of in, we have a wonderful opportunity to connect with people outside of Victoria and to provide services to them via Zoom or through the email or whatever. But the reality is that that obviously does pose issues with offerings and whatnot. So making sure that offers are only made in Australia. Well, so just in terms of offers and stuff, but it's a matter of making sure that in some prospectuses they'll say this offer is not made in the US, because at the end of the day it's a paperless document. I mean, theoretically, if the offer, once it's out there, could be made to a person in the US, but there's ways to say, well, no, this is not an offer to you in this particular jurisdiction, because if it was, there'd be way more headaches. So certainly I think from the capital raising perspective, there's a need to make sure that you are in control of who you're making offers to. And particularly the smaller end of the market, that's even more important, because if you're relying on some personal offer exemption, you really do need to make sure it's a personal offer made to someone who's already interested in receiving offers of that type.
Right.
So that's certainly something that is a feature in the modern day.
So do you find challenges, particularly when we're talking about regulation? So Australia has regulation coming, but we haven't got it quite yet. Singapore's got regulation. There's financial services and I guess digital assets again. America's got regulations, but they've got between different states, 7 different regulations. It must make it hard, because you can't cut everyone out of the pie. You go, okay, everybody in Burwood, Victoria,
Well, I mean, you see Binance move offshore, but even they've had to come to an agreement with the US government. So, I mean, I think if you're operating worldwide, you've got to really be engaging with lawyers worldwide. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not feasible for a lawyer in Victoria or New South Wales to have all of the information that's required for all states and territories and all jurisdictions. I mean, the reality of, and we work with a number of multinational businesses, and at the end of the day, you give advice on Victorian law. That's what I'm authorised to do, admitted in Victoria, and to the extent to which it touches on other countries. I mean, if they're tracking back from a British system, you've got a rough idea as to what the laws will be. But at the end of the day, you need a lawyer in that particular jurisdiction to actually provide some cover advice as to, actually there's some quirks here that you need to take into account.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's a component to what you do that is really a bedside manner as well, Pete. So there's there's how you deliver the goods, which is just as important as delivering the goods. And so does that tie then back into, I guess, bringing your personal character to working with new venture? So what I'm saying is, I guess you must be faced with having to deal with a range of personalities and a range of stresses that people are facing, that might result in them making decisions that are, maybe even nefarious or even, questionable decisions. How do you line that up with I guess maintaining your values and maintaining, a quality service, particularly once you're engaged to support them?
Yeah, so I think that it helps that, that my clients are lovely and generally speaking do align with.
Do you choose them because they're lovely, or do they become lovely?
Well, I think it's the networks that I sort of am a part of tend to be networks that align with my values. So as a consequence, the people in those circles end up, and end up aligning with your own values. So and I find that referrals from either existing clients or those networks are, the best clients to have. So I don't typically find people find me off the internet and sort of say, "Hey, I want to use you," but they know someone who knows someone who's dealt with me before. So to an extent that solves that problem. I also work in commercial law, and so we're doing things collaboratively usually. So not on the dispute side of things. So and to that end, usually there's a win-win solution somewhere along the line, which you're trying to find. So from that perspective, I think that the area of law that I'm in allows me to not have to deal with some of the issues that might be faced with people trying to hide, conceal, and act in ways which you wouldn't necessarily agree with. But that said, I think that there is still. I think that if your client's not following your advice, there's only so long that relationship can.
It's a good sign. They'll self-select out, really.
Yeah. So
because they're paying for advice, not following it, then why do you keep calling?
Yeah. So at that point, there's probably bigger issues at play for them. But at the end of the day, if they're not following advice, then I mean, and to that extent, it's the way I normally provide advice is really to say, look, these are the risks, these are the issues. If you did this, this will happen. If you did this, this will probably happen. And then ultimately, it is the client's decision as to what they do. So it's not as though, but then things which are outside of that, even if you don't necessarily agree with them, then I think that ultimately just wouldn't be something that would make the relationship very easy. So, and that, as you say, it would naturally sort of
self-select. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I guess the old question is, particularly for the early stage ventures, what would be the key things? I guess even if we can sort of identify, we've talked a little bit about capital raising and whatever, but in terms of when it's time to engage, what are normally the topics around where you would want to engage? So I'm imagining intellectual property. I'm imagining agreements with partners. Those early stage things must be, the important things that you at least get right to a degree, or as much as you possibly can. Is there anything else that you would suggest to think about?
Yeah, so I think if you're going into business with someone as well, certainly I think that it's wise to actually think through the ways in which you actually approach decision making, because people do approach decision making very differently. So a lot of people go in as friends and come out as enemies, but you can avoid that if you actually have some conversations up front about, like, what if we need to take money out of the business because I've got school fees to pay. But the other party wants to continue plowing money back into the business and send their kid to local school in order to achieve a greater objective. Do you know what I mean? Like, if we actually plow our money back in the first 5 years, then we'll make 10 times as much in 10 years. So it's like delayed gratification, really. So I think that's one of the key ones. I think as well, having a mind on the way. So if you think about it, it's like, so we can help on the front end, which is how you make money. It's like the contracts that allow you to do that, and they have an effect of modifying your risk as well, in the sense of trying to mitigate that to the extent that you can, and making sure that you can get paid contractually. So if you had to sue on your contracts, could you actually get paid?
Yep.
And that advice is surprisingly, there's a lot of businesses that are started on handshakes, and handshakes are very hard to enforce in the courts.
I've been
Yeah. So the reality is a written contract for at least with your customers, and then same deal on your suppliers. If you're dealing with suppliers and making sure that the payment terms that you've got, and the things that you're signing up, and the risks associated with suppliers are often trying to get personal guarantees, and you may have limited capacity to actually resist those, but there are ways to actually mitigate the risks even as a part of that. So right in the early stages, there's some risk mitigation activities, and that you can do that'll at least limit, if things go the other way, how bad that way will be. So in terms of that's sort of the starting of a normal business. In terms of starting a business using fundraising or something like that, I mean, I think that the biggest sort of ticket item is to really understand that there are limitations on raising money from people. Just at a high level, there are limitations. You have to do it in a way which complies with the law. And so if you're not aware of those, then you need to become aware, because it's a responsibility that you have. And there are easy ways of doing it and the hard ways of doing it. So, yeah.
Right. So the old approach of getting a bunch of friends in the garage and whiteboarding your idea and getting them to write a check, is a very old school thing. So does that still occur, or has everyone gone off to?
Are there still checks? I'm not sure. Is
there? I think my ex-wife uses checks.
So I think that obviously there's no intellectual property in idea, so there's a lot that actually goes on in execution. So, and part of that execution is doing some of the things that I've said. Some of that execution is also making sure that you're meeting your customers' needs. And we don't get too involved in that side of things. I mean, that's a sort of corporate, that's a you activity, sort of making sure that the products or whatever they're selling actually are useful. And at the end of the day, I mean, from my perspective, it's like, law is one thing, but ultimately we're just trying to be useful. We're all trying to be useful for in this world, and if you produce a product or service that's useful to someone and they pay you for it, then you win for the capitalist system and win for you. And so we work in concert on that. It's like, so we're so from the legal side, it's like we really want to know how you're actually contracting with people. What is the way that is easiest for you, and then also to then comply and to do the things. So and to get paid. But yeah, I think that there are still people coming together with great ideas, and then finding the network of people that'll be able to fund that. I mean, it's certainly still going on. And at 3P, we're still in the works of talking about a 3P accelerator, which would sort of, because obviously at 3P we've got accounting and tax, property and finance, financial planning, legal, and so from that perspective, we actually have a good team that can come around people. So we're looking at being able to have an intake of people that have great ideas but need support to sort of help get that to the next stage. And yeah, at the end of the day, yeah, we want to help people to prosper. So that would be a part of that.
So you touched on, ideas, not intellectual property. It's probably one of the common things that I bump into, and I've explained it, so many times in so many different ways. Furniture of the mind versus actual IP that is, protected by legislation. How do you explain? Because in a lot of cases, people think the idea is it. As far as I'm concerned, the idea is it's important, but it's not it. It is executing, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so once you've written it down, the format in which you've written it down is technically covered by copyright. But the reality is that somebody could take that idea and translate that into physical product, or so you have to take that next step. You can't sort of there's less people around trying to buy an idea than there is buying an actual viable business based on that idea.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, maybe tell us a little bit how people would get in touch with you if they wanted to reach out. Where would they find you, Pete?
So we have an office in St Kilda Road, so in 390 St Kilda Road, opposite Anzac Station in Melbourne Grammar, and but also on email, LinkedIn. So happy for you to share those details.
Sure.
But or through you, if they know you, you can refer them on to me.
Well, hopefully, a lot of them don't know me, and they just they listen to the podcast and and click away and come to you. So we'll definitely include. So you're happy for me to include your email and obviously the web address
sure.
in the show notes. Fantastic. All right, Pete. Well, thank you so much for today. I really appreciate it. Good luck with everything you're doing. And we'll talk again soon.
Excellent. No worries. Right. Cheers. Thanks, Pete.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Peter North from 3P Legal. You can find his contact details in the show notes. Until next time, this is Entrepreneurship with Peter Christo.